I was halfway through the security line when the noise started. The bin clattered. Officer Hatcher, young, crew cut, with that half-smile men wear when they enjoy being watched, held up my backpack like it was suspect. Military green, faded, duct-taped on one corner. The kind of wear that doesn't come from style but necessity. My fingers twitched at my side, but I kept still. "Trying to play soldier, ma'am," he said, loud enough to rise above the conveyor hum. The eyes turned first. Then the phones. One man chuckled behind me. Another muttered, "Stolen valor." I didn't look at them. I didn't look at Hatcher either. He flipped the flap open without asking. Inside were no secrets, just the normal things I carry. A tin with throat lozenges, a water-warped photo of my son when he was 12, and the cracked leather notebook. The only thing in the world I still guard. He pulled it out and turned a few pages like he was scanning for a joke. His lip curled. "Looks like a movie prop," he said. "You write this for fun?" A woman nearby scoffed. "Probably picked it up at a flea market." The man behind her raised his phone, angling for a better shot. I heard the click. The small digital sound of being documented, dismissed. I said nothing. A few steps back, near the stanchions, an older man leaned out of line. Navy cap, threadbare, his jacket hanging off bones. "What's that on your strap?" he asked, not loudly, not kindly, just direct. I turned to him. "It's a chevron. 204th Medical." My voice wasn't raised either. One of the few who came back. He nodded once. That was all. And he didn't remove his cap when the phones came out. They say silence is a choice. But sometimes it's what's left when all the words have been used up. I watched Hatcher's fingers trace the names scrawled in the margins of my log. Reyes. Lou. Doc Martin. Names nobody knows but me. He laughed again, nudging his coworker with an elbow. "Look at this D&D relic. More eyes. More quiet. The kind that isn't respectful, just charged. Tense like a waiting room." He set my ID aside. "Could be fake. We'll need a supervisor." I still hadn't spoken. Then came a voice not loud but crisp. "Excuse me, son," a man said from 3 people behind me. He stepped forward wearing a navy blazer, wire-rimmed glasses, and a schoolteacher's comm. "Do you even know what that insignia stands for?" Hatcher frowned. "Sir, I need you to step back. That's the 204th Medical, attached to Forward Ops in Helmand Province. They ran unescorted casualty extractions. Highest non-combat casualty rate of 2010. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I taught history for 30 years, he said. "That patch doesn't come from a costume store." The line quieted completely. Behind me, my hands found the strap of the pack. Familiar weight. As I bent to lift it, a small case slipped from the side pocket and clattered on the tile. A TSA officer picked it up and flipped it open. Inside was a meritorious service medal. Ribbon frayed. Name etched shallow but clear. He looked up. Eyes wide. Said nothing. Just handed it back slowly. I slipped it into my palm. And stood still. I hadn't worn the patch in public in years. After the discharge, I boxed up everything, the medals, the paperwork, even the uniform pants with the faint bloodstains that never quite came out. I didn't burn them. I wasn't angry. Just tired. Just done. The VA said I wasn't in the system. Wrong records. Misfiled. A clerical shrug. I didn't argue. I'd never been good at paperwork. My commanding officer had promised to submit the documentation after my last rotation, but a mortar round took his leg and most of his memory before he could. So I slipped through. No parade, no pension. Just a quiet return home with a bent back and a logbook nobody asked for. My son Mark once asked if I'd driven trucks in the war. I nodded. Let him believe that. Easier that way. You can't explain to a 12-year-old what it means to carry morphine and the weight of dying men on your shoulders while everyone else runs the other direction. Even now, I remember the weight of Reyes's body. He was 19. Had a photo of his little sister taped to his helmet. It fluttered like a wing as we ducked under fire, the rotor wash making everything blur. He bled out before we cleared the valley. I wrote his name down that night. It's on page 37 of the notebook in faded ink that smudged with sweat and dust and something I never cleaned off. I didn't know then how long I'd carry him with me. Now, 30 years later, I stood in Jacksonville Airport under the fluorescent buzz, with strangers staring and a kid with a badge holding my field log like it was a joke. "Where'd you get this, ma'am?" Hatcher asked again, voice sharp. "Write this for fun?" I met his eyes for the first time. "No," I said. He blinked. "I wrote it so I wouldn't forget." He snorted, uncomfortable, trying to re-establish control. Behind him, someone coughed. Then a businessman muttered, "Can we get moving already?" A teenager behind me whispered to her friend, "She looks homeless." I didn't turn. Just breathed. In through the nose. Out through the ache in my knee. Hatcher still held the notebook. He flipped a few more pages. His brow creased. I knew the moment he saw the page with the sketch of the medevac rig, exact specs, scrawled in graphite. Something most civilians wouldn't recognize. Something you'd only draw if you needed to remember where the fuel lines ran because you once had to plug a leak while someone screamed on the floor beside you. "I'll call a supervisor," he muttered. He set the notebook down with something like care. Not quite, but close. The mood had shifted. The room wasn't on my side, not yet. But it had gone quiet enough to notice. That's when the teacher stepped forward again. The man in the navy blazer. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim wallet. Inside was a laminated ID. "Dr. Malcolm Evers," he said, offering it toward the nearest TSA agent. "I'm a Department of Defense historian. Retired. I wrote the field ops chapter on Hellmand." The agent didn't know what to do with that. Evers turned to Hatcher. "The 204th lost 40% of its non-combat personnel that year," he said. "Mostly medics. Mostly unarmed. They were in country for 15 months. She wears that patch because she earned it." He turned back to me. "And we failed them when they came home." I said nothing, but my fingers tightened around the strap of the pack. For the first time that morning, I felt seen. The supervisor arrived then. Officer Rivera. Early 40s, hair pulled tight, sharp in her posture. She took one look at me, then at the logbook still sitting on the table. She didn't ask questions. Just stepped forward and opened it carefully. Her eyes scanned the writing. "This your field log?" she asked. I nodded once. "My uncle served with the 101st, she said. "Had a log like this. Different handwriting, same format." She picked up my ID. Scanned it. Her tone didn't change when she turned to Hatcher, but her stance did. "We'll discuss this later." Then to me, "You're clear to go, ma'am." I gave a single nod. No anger. No triumph. Just acknowledgement. I slid the notebook back into the pack. The weight of it familiar against my hip. I didn't thank her. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because gratitude felt too small for what had just been returned. My dignity. My name. I walked to the gate without looking back. At the boarding queue, the same teenager who'd whispered before stood with her family. She didn't meet my eyes. But as I passed, her father reached for her phone and lowered it. Quietly. Deliberately. He didn't speak. But that small gesture said enough. People forget the sound of silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that comes when something real happens and everyone's too human to pretend it didn't. The kind I used to hear after we lifted off from a hot zone. After the screaming stopped and only the rotor blades filled the air. After the last soldier passed out or died. After the blood pooled and settled. That silence meant survival. It meant we were still here. I found my seat, 22C window. Across the aisle, a boy of maybe 8 leaned across his tray. "Were you in a war?" he asked. I nodded. "Did you shoot?" "No," I said. "I carried medicine. And people." His mother hushed him, embarrassed. But I smiled. Just slightly. I took out the notebook. Opened to page 37. Reyes. 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 He'd been so young. Always asked for extra salt packets from MREs. I added a note under his name. First time I'd written anything in years. "Today, someone remembered you." The seatbelt light clicked on. The boy across the aisle had settled into his tablet. A game with cartoon noises. His mother whispered something about headphones. I watched his fingers move across the screen, smooth, unaware, untouched by war or silence or paperwork that forgot your name. My knees ached, but I sat still. I held the notebook in my lap and stared at it without opening another page. You don't always need to reread the pain. Sometimes just holding it is enough. Somewhere above Georgia, the plane hit turbulence. Nothing sharp, just a low, slow drop that made the cabin hold its breath. I didn't flinch. I'd lived too long to fear what couldn't be seen. Beside me, a man in a blue sport coat glanced up from his laptop. He looked at me, then looked down. I could feel his discomfort, maybe recognition, maybe shame. I could smell his cologne and the faint sweat that rose when people are forced to sit still with the past. His screen flickered. A PowerPoint deck. Sales figures. Quarterly growth. He cleared his throat. "I saw it back there," he said. "The thing with the TSA." I nodded. That was all. I didn't say anything, he added, quieter. I waited. I should have, he said. I nodded again. Still no words. He looked away, then closed the laptop. Let it sit on the tray unopened. That was enough. Sometimes justice doesn't come with speeches. It comes with silence where words once failed. Somewhere near Richmond, I thought about Mark. My son never asked much about my service. He assumed maybe that it was dull. I let him. He told his friends I was a clerk. Said it without malice. That's what I let him believe. When he was a boy, he'd climb into my lap and ask about monsters. Not the kind from movies, the real ones. Why people hurt each other. Why men in uniforms didn't always come home. I told him what I could. That kindness was a choice. That fear could make people cruel. That love had to be practiced like breathing. He's grown now. Married. 2 kids. Lives in San Diego. His wife once said they didn't talk about war in their house. I understood. Still, every Veterans Day, I drove to the cemetery. Left a flower by a name he never asked about. I never explained why I chose that grave. Just said it was tradition. But I remember. I remember everything. Reyes. Doc Martin. Lou. Sergeant Hamadi. And the girl from Kentucky whose name I never learned because she bled out before we landed, and all I had was the Street Christopher medal around her neck. They come back to me most often when I fly. The pressure. The hum. The smell of air vents and recycled oxygen. It brings the body back to memory. On this flight, I didn't fight it. I let the past sit beside me, like a quiet companion. 2 rows up, I saw the back of Officer Hatcher's head. He'd been assigned to gate rotation, apparently. I recognized the slope of his shoulders. The way he fiddled with the zipper on his jacket. He hadn't looked back since I boarded. I didn't need him to. The damage was done. But still, my fingers reached for the small metal case in my side pocket. The metal lay inside. Frayed ribbon. Tarnished clasp. Not pride. Not proof. Just memory hardened into brass. I pressed it once, then tucked it back. As we began our descent, the captain spoke over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in Washington shortly. Weather is clear, temperature 71 degrees. Welcome to our nation's capital. Nation's capital. The phrase sat strangely on my ears. What nation? The one that lost my file? The one that handed me a form letter when I requested therapy and said, this case has been closed? Or the one where a history teacher stood in line and told the truth when no one else would? Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. The descent was smooth. I watched the patchwork land grow larger. Freeways. Suburbs. A river I couldn't name. We hit tarmac and the plane shuddered into stillness. People stood. Reached for bags. Laughed softly. Life returning. I waited. Always waited. The last to leave. I moved slowly, careful of the knee. The notebook was still in my hand. Near the front, a man in a gray hoodie caught my eye. He didn't say anything. Just placed his hand over his heart. No salute. Just that. One palm, flat and still. I held his gaze for a second. Then nodded. That was all. At the gate, a young woman stepped aside to let me pass. She glanced at the patch on my sleeve but didn't speak. Her bag was open. Inside, a book about military nursing. I saw the title. She didn't notice me notice it. That's the thing about service. It lingers where you least expect it. Not in parades. Not in speeches. But in the quiet choices of strangers. Outside, I found a bench near baggage claim. Set my bag down. Watched people reunite. A man in a 3-piece suit hugged his daughter. A woman in scrubs typed a text with one hand and wiped her eyes with the other. Somewhere in the chaos, my own name echoed from the intercom. Passenger Charlotte Dane, please proceed to Carousel 6. I stood. Shouldered the pack. Moved through the terminal like I'd done 100 times before. But this time I didn't hide the patch. Didn't turn the bag inward so the insignia couldn't be seen. I walked through that terminal exactly as I was. A medic. A ghost from Hellmand. A woman who had written down the names no one else remembered. And who, for one moment, just one had been seen. Carousel 6 took a while. The belt kept moving, empty at first, then with bursts of battered luggage, plastic wheels thudding, handles askew. I stood back, hands at my sides. I didn't bring a suitcase. Just the pack. Everything else I left behind. A man beside me grumbled about lost bags. His wife scrolled on her phone. Neither of them looked at me. I watched the glass doors ahead, automatic and slow, sliding open every time a family or business traveler passed through. Outside, cabs queued like cattle, yellow and impatient. I wasn't in a rush. I wasn't even sure who I'd become when I walked past that threshold. A few minutes later, I turned away from the carousel and made for the exit. The cool air of the terminal chased the heat off my neck. The notebook was still warm in my hand. Then I saw her. Rivera, the TSA supervisor. She stood near the Starbucks across from baggage claim, coffee in hand, no badge in sight. She caught my eye before I could look away. Walked toward me. No crowd now. No line. Just two women standing in a terminal that smelled of wax floor and burnt espresso. I wanted to say she began, her voice quieter than before. I looked it up after you left. The 204th. I nodded. Let her speak. My uncle died in Cost 2009. He wasn't with the 204th, but he talked about you all. Said they called your unit the Ghost Medics. She took a slow breath. No escorts. No fire teams. Just medicine and guts. I looked at her finally. That's what they gave us, I said. Medicine. No guns. Her face didn't change. I wish I'd said something sooner, she said. You said enough, I replied. She glanced down at the notebook in my hand. You still carry it? I nodded. Some things don't belong in a file cabinet. She smiled, faint. Yeah, she said. Some things need to be carried. We parted without more words. Outside, the air hit harder. Hot, sticky July heat. Taxis idled. An old veteran in a denim vest leaned against a pillar, waiting for his ride. We didn't speak, but he nodded as I passed. There's a language between us. The ones who came back. The ones who never made it into the brochure. I walked 3 blocks. Found the metro. Took the red line. No one sat next to me. That was fine. The train hummed. Passed beneath the city. A tunnel of lights and walls and brief glimpses of faces in passing cars. At DuPont, I stepped off. Climbed the steps slow. The sun was full now, burning against stone buildings and glass. The sidewalk shimmered. The air smelled like diesel and bakery sugar. I crossed the plaza. Found the address I'd memorized. Mark's apartment was near the corner. A walk-up with ivy curling around the drainpipe. 3 floors. 1 broken step. I didn't go up. Just stood there. I hadn't told him I was coming. He didn't know about the conference. Or the call from the VA group who found my name buried in an old ledger and invited me to speak on a panel about forgotten units. I told them I'd think about it. I needed to know I could walk into that room and still be whole. I didn't knock. Just sat on the curb across from his building and watched the door. After 20 minutes it opened. Mark stepped out. Still thin, like he'd been in high school. Still with that slight stoop in his shoulders, like he was always preparing for disappointment. He held a baby carrier in one hand. A toddler clung to his jeans. He didn't see me. He loaded both kids into the car, fumbling with straps. I watched his hands. Noticed how careful he was. He climbed in. Drove off. I didn't wave. I wasn't ready. But I wasn't hiding either. Later, I found a bench 2 blocks from the VA office. Pulled the notebook out again. Turned to page 46. Doc Martin's name stared back. Still smudged. Still hard to read. I thought about writing more. Maybe the full story. How he held the pressure on Lou's femoral artery until the skin turned blue. How he whispered to me as the mortar shells got closer, told me his daughter had just turned 2. She'd be in her 40s now. Might be out there. Might never know. I flipped forward to a blank page. Wrote slowly. July 7th. DC. I was seen. Not questioned. Not laughed at. Someone remembered. The patch stayed on. I underlined that last sentence once. Closed the notebook. Held it in my lap. Nearby, a woman in scrubs sat down. She was on her lunch break. Took out a sandwich. Bit quietly. Then glanced at the patch on my arm. 204th? She asked. I nodded. My aunt served with them, she said. Said they were the bravest people she ever met. I looked at her. What was her name? She thought for a moment. Patel. She was a medic too. But didn't talk about it much. Neither did I said. She finished her sandwich. Stood up. She would have liked you. Maybe we met, I said. Maybe, she replied. She walked off. Left behind a half-empty bottle of water on the bench. I didn't drink it, but I held it in my hand, briefly, like a gesture pass forward. The VA office opened at 2. I stood, straightened the patch on my sleeve, and walked through the door. The VA office smelled like old carpet and disinfectant. The kind of place where time feels slowed down. where fluorescent lights hum with quiet judgment and the air is always just a little too cold, like it's afraid of emotion. I gave my name at the desk. The woman behind the glass didn't blink, didn't ask for an ID. She just checked a clipboard, then handed me a lanyard with a paper badge. Room 3C. End of the hall. Her voice was soft, practiced, meant to soothe, meant for people like me. I took the badge, didn't clip it on, just held it. The hallway was lined with photos, black and white portraits, colorized ones, men and women in uniforms from every branch, some smiling, some not. The captions were small, printed neatly beneath glass. One caught my eye. A woman in a helmet too large for her head, her hands wrapped in gauze. No rank visible, no medal, just a caption, 204th Medical Company, Helmand Province, 2010. Not me, but someone I might have known. Someone who carried a stretcher or an 4-bag or a body. I touched the edge of the frame. Just for a second. Room 3C was quiet when I entered. 4 chairs. A circle. A pitcher of water on a metal tray. A box of tissues half empty. 3 other people were already seated. A man in desert camo pants and a hoodie. Probably Gulf War. Eyes bloodshot but clear. A woman with close-cut hair and a Marine Corps ball cap in her lap. She sat with her arms crossed, not defensive, just braced. And an older man, oxygen tube looped under his nose, hands clasped on a cane. The facilitator entered last. You could tell she'd served. Not just by the patches on her satchel, but by the way she stood. Like someone used to wait. She smiled at me. You're Dane. I nodded. She didn't introduce me. Didn't ask for my story. Just gestured to a chair. We were just about to begin. I sat. The others didn't look at me, not directly. The facilitator leaned forward. No pressure to speak, she said. Just be here. That's enough. We went around slowly. The Marine woman spoke first. Her voice was calm, but there was iron under it. I don't go to cemeteries anymore, she said. Used to. Not now. Feels like they remember better than people do. The man in the hoodie nodded. Same. Then the older man cleared his throat. I wore my uniform to my grandson's school once. Thought it'd mean something. Kid next to him asked if I was a security guard. Nobody laughed. But something passed between us. A shared ache. A knowing. When it was my turn, I waited a moment. Then spoke. I was with the 204th, Forward Deployment, Helmand. Mostly extractions. Mostly triage. The room went still. The Marine woman's eyes lifted. I know that unit. I don't think I ever came home, I said. I just stopped going back. The man in the hoodie leaned forward. You still have your logbook? I held it up slightly. Never left it. He nodded, like that meant something important. The facilitator didn't say anything for a long time. Then, would you be willing to speak at the panel next week? Not formally. Just, share what you shared now. I looked down at the patch on my sleeve. Maybe it was time. Yes, I said. The session ended an hour later. As we stood, the Marine woman came to me. Held out her hand. Carter, she said. Dane, I replied. You were the ones who flew us out after that school attack. 2010. St. John Valley. I blinked. That was Reyes's team. Her grip tightened. He didn't make it. But you got the rest of us out. I was 16. I didn't know what to say. But she did. Thank you. Then she turned. Walked out. Outside, the city buzzed. Horns. Sirens. Voices. The sound of lives in motion. I sat on the steps. Opened the notebook to page 37 again. Reyes. I added one more line. Carter's alive. She remembers. It was the first time I'd written his name without crying. Across the plaza, a flag rose in the wind. Not high. Not ceremonially. Just steady. I stood. Walked toward the metro. This time, I sat in the aisle seat. I let the notebook rest on the tray. Didn't hide it when the man beside me glanced at it. He didn't speak, but he kept looking. Finally, he asked, was that yours? Or family members? I looked at him. It's mine. He nodded. After a long pause, he said, thank you. I didn't reply, but I didn't look away either. I arrived at the auditorium early. The VA had offered to send a car, but I declined. I walked instead. Took the long route through the sculpture garden where metal figures cast long morning shadows on the pavement. A child ran past me carrying a juice box. His father called after him, breathless. I watched them disappear around a corner and felt the same ache that came every time I saw what never was with Mark. The building was unassuming. Brick exterior. Sliding glass doors. Inside, folding chairs lined up in rows, a podium at the front. A navy banner above the stage read, "Honoring the Forgotten, Healing Through Memory." I waited near the back while they set up microphones and checked cords. I didn't like microphones. Never had. Too loud. Too final. They capture everything but understanding. A woman approached, young, nervous. Her clipboard quivered slightly in her grip. "You must be Ms. Dane?" I nodded. "We've got you on the program right before lunch. Just 10 minutes. Whatever you want to say." I thanked her, though I had nothing written. 10 minutes wasn't much. But it was more than the VA had given me the day I walked into their office after discharge and heard the word unverified. The auditorium filled slowly. Veterans mostly. Some young, some with white hair and slow steps. Some in pressed shirts and polished shoes. Others with calloused hands and thrifted coats. A few wore ribbons. Most did not. They looked like people who didn't want to be noticed, only remembered. The panel began. Stories were shared about service, about trauma, about trying to rebuild when the country you serve forgets where it put your name. One man spoke about burn pits. Another about housing insecurity. A woman read a letter she wrote to her daughter explaining why the nightmares never really go away. And then they called mine. Charlotte Dane. Army medic. 204th Medical Company, Helmand Province. I walked up slowly. The light above the podium buzzed faintly. I adjusted the mic downward, though I knew I wouldn't need to speak loudly. The room quieted. "I didn't come today to be thanked," I began. "I didn't come for recognition. I came because for 30 years I thought silence was strength. That if I kept my head down, if I didn't ask for anything, maybe I'd make peace with the past." I glanced down at the notebook in my hand. This has the names of people I carried. Some lived. Some didn't. I wrote them down because I was afraid the world would forget. A woman in the front row dabbed her eyes with a napkin. I was with the 204th. We carried morphine, not rifles. We weren't in the system long enough to make headlines. But we went in. And we brought people out. A long pause. I let it stretch. Let the weight settle. 2 days ago, a TSA officer laughed at this notebook. Called it a prop. Said maybe I bought it at a thrift store. The audience didn't react. Not out loud. But something shifted in their faces. He wasn't the first to question me. He won't be the last. But this time, someone stepped forward. I looked out over the crowd. A stranger. A teacher. A man who remembered what I'd forgotten. That memory isn't just survival, it's justice. I lifted the notebook slightly. "There's a name in here, Reyes. He bled out before we got him to the evac point. He asked me to tell his sister he tried. I never met her. I never wrote the letter. But I carried him anyway." Silence held. Today I met someone who was there. A Marine. Said I pulled her out that day. I didn't know. But she remembered. My voice caught. Not loud. Just a pause. "I'm not here to settle scores. I'm here to say this. Your stories matter. Even when the system forgets. Even when the papers are lost. What we did, the people we carried, they live here." I tapped the notebook once. "They live in us." I stepped back. No applause. Not right away. Then slowly a single clap. Then another. But soft. Reverent. I left the stage without looking up. In the hallway, I sat on a bench near the restroom. A man approached quietly. Vietnam-era jacket. Shrapnel scar on his neck. He sat beside me but didn't speak for a long time. Finally, mine was named Halvorsen. Hit in the gut. Called for his mother. I never said it out loud. Not in 40 years. He looked at me. Until now. I nodded. Didn't ask more. He reached into his pocket. Pulled out a photo. Black and white. Faded. A young man smiling in front of a barracks wall. He handed it to me. I looked at it. Then handed it back. "That's enough," he said. "Just someone seeing it." That afternoon, I skipped the lunch. Walked back toward the city. At a crosswalk, a boy on a scooter passed me too fast and shouted, "Move it, Grandma." His mother didn't correct him. But an old man near the coffee shop did. "Watch your mouth," he said to the boy. That woman walked through fire. The boy didn't understand. But his mother looked at me and nodded. That was enough. Later, in a small cafe off H Street, I ordered tea. Sat near the window. Opened the notebook. Found a blank page. Wrote one more name. Halvorsen. Gut wound. 1969, Vietnam. Remembered today by a friend. That night, I stayed in a modest room above the train station. The walls were thin, but for once I slept without waking. No sweat. No footsteps echoing down a hospital tent. No hands reaching from the past. Just sleep. Still. Whole. Morning came gently. Gray light filtered through the curtains like mist. No alarms, no orders, no engine hum. Just the soft creak of old pipes and the distant shuffle of the city waking up. I packed slowly. The notebook went back into the side pocket. I adjusted the strap on my backpack. The chevron patch still held, stitched tightly along the seam. Frayed but clear. I paused before the mirror. Not out of vanity. Just to see myself as I was. The lines on my face. The steady weight in my eyes. Nothing to hide. Nothing to explain. The train station buzzed with movement. Announcements echoed over static speakers. A little girl pointed at my patch and tugged her mother's sleeve. Her mother bent down, whispered something, and the girl stood straighter after that. She didn't wave. Just watched as I passed. I boarded early. Found 22C again. This time I sat by the window. The notebook lay open on my tray table. Across the aisle, a young man in a black suit looked over. He hesitated, then asked, "Were you in a war?" I nodded. "Did you shoot?" "No," I said. "I carried medicine. And people." He didn't know what to say after that. So he nodded and looked forward. I turned the page. Reyes's name stared back, gentle in its faded ink. I slid my pen from the spine of the book and wrote beneath it. "Today, someone remembered you." The engines hummed. The cabin filled. I could feel the presence of phones. Eyes. Maybe even recognition. But this time it didn't matter. I adjusted the patch on my sleeve as the plane taxied. A few rows ahead, someone who had filmed me 2 days ago looked up. A man with a trimmed beard and a wedding ring. He stood, slowly, and placed his hand over his heart. He didn't speak, didn't look away. Charlotte Dane stared forward. Not vindicated, not proud, just steady. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to hide the patch. The plane lifted into the sky. I closed my eyes, and for once the past didn't press down on me. It traveled with me, but lighter now, recorded, remembered, intact.